Imagine standing on the roof of the world, 12,800 feet above sea level, where the air is so thin every breath feels like a victory and the cold wind of the Bolivian Altiplano bites through your jacket like invisible glass. You are standing in the ruins of Puma Punku, a place that defies logic, a landscape scattered with gray stones that look less like ancient ruins and more like the wreckage of a futuristic factory exploded by time. Picture yourself reaching out with a trembling hand to touch a block of gray andesite, expecting the rough, weathered texture of a castle wall or a pyramid stone, but instead, your fingertips glide across a surface as smooth as your smartphone screen, cool and polished to a mirror-like finish that laughs at the centuries. This is not just masonry. This is a geometric impossibility carved into rock so hard it destroys modern tools, yet here it lies, shaped with a precision that would make a laser cutter jealous. Look closer at the stone in front of you. It's not a shapeless boulder, but a complex geometric form with perfect interior right angles, sharp corners that could cut paper, and tiny, equidistant drill holes that look like they were bored by a diamond-tipped power tool yesterday, not 1,500 years ago. You feel a shiver that has nothing to do with the altitude. How? How did a civilization without the wheel, without steel, without writing as we know it, slice through volcanic rock as if it were soft butter? Imagine the sheer psychological weight of this mystery pressing on you like the 13,000 feet of atmosphere above. You look at a block weighing 131 tons, that's a fully loaded locomotive or a blue whale made of solid rock, and realize it was dragged here, shaped, and lifted without cranes or diesel engines. You try to picture the scene. Thousands of people gasping for air in the oxygen-starved heights, hauling a stone monster across terrain where trees don't grow to make rollers, where the ground fights you, where the sun burns and the nights freeze. It feels impossible. It feels forbidden. But the real shock, the one that makes your heart race, is the interlocking pattern. These aren't just stacked rocks like a crude wall. They are giant, three-dimensional puzzle pieces, massive stone Legos designed to lock together in a grip so tight a sheet of paper cannot slide between them. Why go to this insane effort? Why build a structure that requires engineering degrees to even understand, let alone construct, in the middle of a barren, high-altitude desert? You are staring at the shattered remnants of a technology we have completely forgotten, a silence that screams with lost knowledge. We are about to decode the stone silence. To understand the miracle of Puma Punku, we must first anchor ourselves in the deep, foggy timeline of human history, peeling back the layers of the centuries to a time long before the famous Inca Empire rose to power. Picture the Tiwanaku culture, a mysterious and powerful civilization that thrived here around 500 to 600 AD, masterminding a spiritual and political empire that spanned vast stretches of the Andes. While Europe was stumbling through the Dark Ages, the engineers of Tiwanaku were turning the high plateau into a laboratory of stone, driven by a religious or social fervor we can only guess at, viewing this site as the center of their cosmos, the place where the creator god Viracocha carved giants from stone to populate the earth. Let's talk about the material itself because this is the bedrock of the mystery: andesite and red sandstone. Imagine trying to carve a shape out of a diamond using a plastic spoon. That is the exaggeration, but the reality is nearly as stark. Andesite is a volcanic rock rich in silica, incredibly dense and hard, scoring high on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness, significantly tougher than the limestone used in the Great Pyramids of Egypt. To shape this stubborn, unforgiving material, the Tiwanaku masons didn't have hardened steel chisels or diamond saws. They had stone hammers, bronze tools which are far softer than the rock they were cutting, and limitless reservoirs of sand and water. Picture the process. Not a quick cut, but an agonizingly slow, rhythmic abrasion, rubbing sand, which contains quartz crystals harder than andesite, against the stone for hours, days, years, polishing millimeters away at a time until a perfect flat surface emerged. It is the patience of a glacier condensed into human hands. Early explorers who stumbled upon these ruins in the 19th and 20th centuries were baffled, their journals filled with sketches of H-blocks and intricate archways that looked machine-milled, sparking wild theories of lost continents or extraterrestrial help. But the truth is far more impressive. It is the triumph of human obsession. Visualize the quarry sites kilometers away. The red sandstone came from about 10 kilometers out, a manageable hike, but the gray andesite, the star of the show, came from over 90 kilometers away across Lake Titicaca. Imagine the logistics of a pre-industrial Amazon warehouse, coordinating the movement of mountain-sized slabs across a lake that behaves like an ocean, then dragging them up into the thin air. This wasn't just a building project. It was the entire economic and spiritual engine of a civilization, a task that defined generations, where a grandfather might smooth a corner that his grandson would eventually place into a wall. This is the foundation of the impossible. Now we descend into the mechanical genius of the construction itself, the how that separates Puma Punku from every other ancient site on Earth. Step 1 is the H-block, the iconic symbol of the site. Picture a massive stone carved into the shape of a capital H with complex multifaceted cutouts looking like a standardized component for a giant circuit board. These blocks were not designed to stand alone. They were designed to fit together in a precise, repetitive line, creating a wall that was seamless and uniform. The most mind-bending innovation here is the use of metal clamps, a technique so advanced it feels anachronistic, like finding a zipper on a toga. Imagine the masons carving T-shaped or I-shaped grooves into the ends of two adjacent blocks, creating a negative mold that spans the gap between them. Now, picture them smelting copper, arsenic, and nickel, a rare and difficult alloy called arsenical bronze, and pouring this molten liquid fire directly into the stone grooves. As the metal cools and hardens, it shrinks slightly, pulling the two massive stones together with a grip stronger than gravity, effectively stapling the building together with metal tendons. Why this obsession with locking stones together? Because the Andes are alive. This is earthquake country, a land where the ground ripples and rolls like the sea. If you build a rigid wall with mortar, the glue used in bricklaying, a strong earthquake will snap the mortar, crack the bricks, and bring the whole thing crashing down. But the engineers of Puma Punku understood the principle of dynamic stability. Picture a wicker basket versus a ceramic vase. Drop the vase, it shatters. Drop the basket, it flexes and bounces. By using dry stone construction, no mortar, and interlocking shapes with metal clamps, the structures could move with the seismic waves, dancing and vibrating as the earth shook, dissipating the deadly energy through friction between the stones, then settling back into their perfect puzzle-lock positions when the shaking stopped. This is exactly how modern skyscrapers in Tokyo are designed, with flexible joints and dampeners, yet here it is, practiced 15 centuries ago by people who ostensibly didn't have the wheel. Visualize the precision of the cuts needed for this to work. We aren't talking about good enough fits, we are talking about tolerances within fractions of a millimeter. If a block is slightly off, the seismic wave will hammer it against its neighbor until it shatters. The surfaces at Puma Punku are so flat that when you place a straight-edge ruler against them, you can't see light passing through the gap. This required an understanding of descriptive geometry, the math of describing 3D shapes on 2D planes that rivals our own textbooks. You are looking at a fortress designed not just to impress the gods, but to survive the wrath of the planet itself. The logic of construction is brilliant, but it slams headfirst into the sheer physical brutality of transportation, the barrier that skeptics and engineers still bruise their brains against. We must address the elephant in the room, or rather, the blue whale in the room, the 131-ton slab of red sandstone that serves as the base of a platform. Physics is a cruel mistress. To move mass, you need force. And at 12,800 feet, the air contains about 40% less oxygen than at sea level. Imagine trying to push a stalled SUV while breathing through a narrow straw. Your muscles scream for oxygen that isn't there, lactic acid builds up instantly, and your heart hammers against your ribs like a trapped bird. Now multiply that exhaustion by 1,000. Conventional wisdom suggests wooden rollers, tree trunks placed under the stone to roll it forward. But here is the catch. We are above the tree line. The Altiplano is a high desert. Massive trees do not grow here, and importing enough timber to move a city's worth of stone would be a logistical nightmare rivaling the stone transport itself. So, how did they do it? Some theories propose the wet clay method. Picture a perfectly leveled trench lined with slick, water-saturated clay, creating a slip slide for megaliths. In this scenario, thousands of workers would pull on ropes made of llama wool or reeds, sliding the colossal block over the lubricated mud. It sounds plausible until you calculate the friction. If the stone stops for even a second, the suction of the drying clay would glue it to the earth, requiring unimaginable force to get it moving again. Other researchers suggest a tumbling method for smaller blocks, creating a custom shape that allows the stone to be rolled like a square wheel, but for the 100-ton monsters, this is physics suicide. Then there is the ramp debate. To lift these stones up to the platform, you would need a massive earthen ramp with a gentle slope, but ramps require millions of cubic feet of soil and stone fill. Where is the evidence of these ramps? They seem to have vanished, or perhaps were never there. This absence has fueled the lost technology fires, whispers of sound levitation or softened stone, ideas that sound like magic but are often desperate attempts to explain the inexplicable engineering gap. However, let's ground ourselves in the awe of human capability. Recent experiments have shown that with well-placed pivot points and levers, small teams can move massive weights. Picture walking a heavy refrigerator by tilting it corner to corner. Now imagine that scaled up with a workforce that viewed this labor as a sacred act, a direct communion with the divine. The lack of a simple answer doesn't mean it was aliens. It means we have underestimated the sheer, raw, stubborn brilliance of our ancestors who had nothing but time, faith, and stone. As we delve deeper into the structural mastery, we find layers of genius that go beyond just holding the building up. We find a design engaged in a conversation with the elements, specifically the relentless howling wind of the plateau. Puma Punku is an open-air complex exposed to high-velocity gusts that can strip paint and freeze flesh. A solid, flat wall in this environment is a sail. It catches the full force of the wind, creating immense lateral pressure that can topple even heavy stones over centuries. But look at the H-blocks and the intricate gates again. They are not solid barriers. They are complex, aerodynamic lattices. The cutouts, the spaces between the pillars, the intricate relief carvings, these break up the wind shear. Visualize the wind hitting the structure. Instead of slamming into a flat surface, the air is channeled through the gaps, swirling around the geometric reliefs, losing its destructive energy in 1,000 tiny eddies and vortices. It is the same principle used in modern bridge design or perforated metal facades on skyscrapers to reduce wind load. Did the Tiwanaku engineers model aerodynamics in a wind tunnel? No, but they lived in the wind. They knew its personality, its rage, and they built their stone gods to let the wind pass through them, not fight against them. Then there is the mystery of the drilled holes. Tiny, millimeter-perfect tubes bored into the andesite. Some are so small you can barely fit a paperclip inside. What were they for? Some theories suggest they held ornamental gold pins, long since looted, that would have made the gray stones glitter like a sunburst. Others suggest a more acoustic function. Imagine the wind whistling through these meticulously carved channels, turning the entire temple into a giant, mournful stone organ, singing with the breath of the mountains. This wasn't just a visual spectacle, it was a multi-sensory machine. Comparing this to the Great Pyramids or Stonehenge, we see a different philosophy. Egypt was about mass and eternity through sheer size. Puma Punku is about complexity and eternity through geometry. It is modular architecture, a prefabricated temple where blocks were likely cut and finished at the quarry, then assembled on-site like a kit. This implies blueprints, standardization, and a level of project management that rivals a modern construction firm. The lack of mortar wasn't a primitive lack of cement. It was a sophisticated choice for flexibility, drainage, and endurance. They didn't build for a lifetime. They built for a timeline that doesn't end. Today, Puma Punku sits as a chaotic, shattered puzzle, a testament to both creation and destruction. The site was not just ruined by time, it was ravaged by treasure hunters who smashed the blocks looking for gold, and by later builders who treated this sacred site as a convenient quarry, stealing the perfectly cut stones to build railways and churches. What we see now is perhaps only a tiny percentage of the original magnificence, a skeleton of a giant picked clean by scavengers. But modern science is finally catching up to the Tiwanaku masons. We are no longer just staring at the stones. We are scanning them with ground-penetrating radar, revealing subterranean chambers and foundations that hint at a much larger complex buried beneath the dirt. We use 3D laser scanning to map the surface variations of the blocks to within microns, proving mathematically that the flatness is nearly perfect, yet finding microscopic tool marks that finally put to rest the idea of lasers. These marks show the chaotic human signature of hand tools, stones pounding stones, but applied with a consistency that borders on robotic. This doesn't reduce the wonder, it amplifies it. It tells us that the magic was actually a cultural discipline of perfectionism that we can scarcely comprehend today. We live in a world of disposable cheapness. They lived in a world where a single stone cut was a prayer that lasted a lifetime. We have journeyed from the breathless heights of the Andes to the microscopic valleys of polished stone, from the thunder of earthquakes to the whisper of wind through ancient flutes. We have seen how the Tiwanaku culture defied the impossible, turning volcanic rock into a seismic-proof, modular masterpiece using nothing but stone tools, physics, and a patience that spans generations. We've decoded the H-blocks as the ultimate earthquake dampers, the metal clamps as ancient staples, and the ramp-free transport as a feat of leverage and human will that eclipses the pyramids in logistical daring. Puma Punku is not just a pile of rocks, it is a frozen symphony of mathematics and geology, a place where the human spirit hardened itself against the cold and the dark to leave a mark that says, "We were here, and we knew the secrets of the stone." It stands as a defiant question mark on the high plateau, challenging us to look closer, think deeper, and respect the ancient architects who built not for their today, but for the eternal tomorrow. If this journey into the impossible geometry of the ancients shifted your perspective on what human hands can do, subscribe and share your wonder. Which ancient mystery should we decode next to rewrite your reality?